Welcome to the Fredonia Central School Board of Education meeting for Friday, May 30th, 2025. We start each meeting with a pledge of allegiance, so please join me. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic which stands one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. It's a bit of an unusual meeting tonight on a Friday night. It's also unusual not to have any consent. There's no consent here, so we need to move right into the agenda and approve the agenda for the regular meeting of Friday, May 30th, 2025. Can I have a motion?
So moved.
Ms. Ford, a second?
Second.
And Ms. Hahn, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, we move right into our first round of public comment. For those of you that have not been here before, the board has reserved this time to hear comments from the audience. Those wishing to address the board are asked to stand, give your name and address, and please limit your comments to 5 minutes or less. Concerns and comments during this session should be directly related to the agenda, which I assume they would be, and we have a microphone. So we'll open up to anybody who have any public comments tonight. We also have one at the end of the session too. Ms. Dace?
Hello, good evening on this Friday night. Once again, I don't wish to be here. I don't want to be here. I feel compelled to be here related to the budget. So we'll hear what you are proposing, but I have some assumptions of what you may or may not do. But I had a friend who, I said it was defeated, there'll be another vote, and she said, well, if it had passed, would there be a vote? I said no, and I didn't even think about it. 2 hours later, I was gardening, I thought, oh, I know what she meant. She meant is, you don't like how it turns out. Obviously, I know you're following legal protocol, but some strong lobbying in the past. You don't like how it turns out, so you can put another vote. But I was like, so if it was a yes vote, would it ever be a second vote? Are you sure you meant yes? Maybe you meant no. So I found that kind of funny. But so yeah, so we know, of course, it was defeated. I'm assuming you're going to come down. We'll see how much, maybe 0.5%. But I'm still curious if your budget is still up over 5%, being with the state aid that you got, which is less direct taxed, but it's still our taxes. So, and I think last year you're up 8%, but I could be wrong about that. So I'm assuming you'll come down 0.5% or so. What I don't want to hear is, as far as positions cut or not cut, is we need time to think about where to cut positions, because I've beat that drum so many times. Now I hope that you've maybe moved some teachers around, okay, without hiring, again, an outside position. You may have done that, and if you have, that's good, and maybe you've done one. So I hear a little bit, to say we need time to where to cut positions, it's like you've had 3 years, okay? It's not just me last year, other teacher was the year before, and you always know your numbers were going down. And what I did think of before was that, and occurred to me right away, is there was a lot of grant money through COVID. And I remember there were positions hired, and it said, well, what are we going to happen when this COVID money runs out? It's like, oh, don't worry, we'll absorb it through attrition, teachers retiring. But that has not occurred. So that is why you're in the situation that you're in. That has not happened. So what happened to that? That was just all talk, and it didn't happen. So again, if you've moved a teacher around, that's okay. That's what I've heard, but I don't know what's happening at Wheelock, or what cuts you've made. But to only come down 0.5%, to maybe assuming you've done that, is not enough. And I know even with retirements, your classes are still small. You have small class sizes. And even myself enjoy a small class size, but where's the data to prove that that really helps? And when I look at, I'm not a New York State big test person, believe me, but it is a measure. And so I know you've been stagnant for at least 3 years, and you're even below the New York State low average. So I think that's some data right there that your small class sizes, something's not panning out. So, whatever changes, you need to have that. And again, some things just don't cost money. I know in the high school at one point suggested hiring a psychologist because of the problems. I admit kids are coming with issues, but then when you eliminated cell phones, that resolved a lot of that. And so what I'm saying is what I said last time I was here in my own background of schooling is there are so many things you can do that do not cost money. So stop throwing money at the issue thinking that you're going to solve problems. It's just like you're addicted to spending or something, I don't know. But so I would have that to say. And again, what's all the comments I made about the COVID and all that kind of thing. I've heard that even if you've switched some teachers around, that maybe the elementary is hiring a psychologist. So that's like hiring out again. It's robbing Peter to pay Paul. You can do better. And so I still recommend to the people that I have that no, because I think even at 0%, you still, with the state aid that you're getting, are still having a nice buffer there. So you don't quite communicate that to the public, maybe not. There's a lot to understand and digest, I know, but you're still up, even at a 0%. And that's what I believe you should do, because I know of all the waste. And going back to that survey sometime, of which I've been hammering, you can do that. There's some protocols you have to follow, but you will find waste. I don't think I'm an AI person. There's a lot probably I don't like about it, but if there was AI and they connected the dots, you would find a lot of waste and a lot of things that you could improve in many areas. And again, everything I've said is no one losing a job. It's just being more efficient. So this is not a setback. You should not review it as a setback, which I think was communicated to some of the school. It's not a setback. It's an opportunity to work with the community and make some changes that you can make. You can make these changes and work with the community. They're tired of just the same old, same old. So I think that's what I have to say in summary. And actually, my grandchildren are here because their parents are at a funeral in Utah. So I had to bring them. So hopefully they're behaving themselves. But my one grandson doesn't know much about taxes, but he's heard me talk about it, and he said, can I speak? So as he did bring us a little self, so you can come up if you want. State your name and whatever you type up. Okay.
Hi, I'm Lincoln Kraut, 442 Osborne Road. My family moved here from Ohio while my father is in job training in Colorado. I'm living with my grandparents for a few months and homeschooling. Even though I don't go to public school right now, there are many things I've been able to do and like living here. I've heard my grandmother talk about taxes, which I don't know much about, but I have been able to do a lot of things that don't cost money. I've tapped maple trees and made maple syrup, hatched chicks, studied exhibits at the Barker Museum and the Grange, taken nature walks to learn about plants, animals, and the climate, taken care of and learned about farm animals. Daisy, our cow, is going to have her calf any day now, and my grandma checks on her in the middle of the night. I volunteer at the lighthouse as a tour guide. I spoke at the Memorial Day service and marched in the parade, and hope to attend some of the General Lafayette activities coming up, and I study local native sites. I'm thinking kids who go to school could do some of the same things, and I enjoy living here, but I will be sad when I have to leave. That's all I have to say.
I didn't catch your name.
Lincoln.
Lincoln, thank you. Anybody else like to speak tonight?
Pardon me?
Yeah, yes.
Excuse me. Oh, I'm sorry.
Hi, my name is Linda Shields. I live at 227 Seymour Street in Fredonia. I was at the last board meeting, and I hope to be at board meetings from now until I hope someone takes what I'm about to say seriously. I asked about consolidation or mergers of schools at the last meeting. I think in light of the budget being voted down, it's maybe something that should be taken more seriously. I saw in the newspaper that Panama, Sherman, and Clymer did a poll or a survey to see if they should move forward on a merger, and it was approved. I would like to see if maybe our school district could do the same thing. I think it's time for a lot of mergers throughout this county. We're a small county. We have fewer people than we did 10 years ago. And I think that when, say, the village of Fredonia was formed, I think it was 1829, everybody was self-contained. So we had all these small governments, small schools. People didn't travel farther than, say, 10 miles in their lifetime. But now I think we're at a point financially, and you read this in the newspaper every day, Dunkirk, Fredonia, lots of other areas, we're all struggling financially, and I think it's time to consolidate our services. I know might freak some people out, but why don't we have 2 regional high schools in this county? Our kids that go to BOCES travel from all over the county to 2 schools. Why couldn't we do the same thing with a regional high school? But at this point, I would be happy to just see us start thinking about mergers. Maybe that's too pie in the sky to consider at this point, but I think we have to do something. We can't just keep paying more. I know I'm retired and my income doesn't go up, so I'd like to see us consider mergers. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Shields. Is there anybody else who would like to speak in our first session here? Mr. Paschke.
Hi, Darren Paschke, 4 Nance Terrace, Fredonia, New York. I will soon be joining the retirees and being on a fixed income, but I want to really speak to what is in the board agenda tonight, which looks like a 1.9% increase. And I think it's imperative to understand for everyone who's going to be voting on this that 1.9% is exactly equal to what we voted on already. That is the building project, unless I'm incorrect. I think that is what it is. So above and beyond that, there is no additional monies that we're looking at. So it's something that was already approved to do the building project, and you're essentially coming out with a 0% above that. So there's no new spending. And I want to make sure that that's what people understand, that this is not asking for an additional 1.9% on anything. This is just the 1.9% that was already approved through the earlier vote. It just needs to be included in the budget at this point, if that's correct. To me, that's a message that I'm not sure everybody got, and it's really important that everybody understands that there's no new spending here. Thanks.
Thank you, Mr. Paschke. Any other comments in our first session tonight? Okay, well, we'll move on. So now we move right into a discussion of the budget, our final 25-26 proposed budget presentation. Mr. Forbes.
Yeah, so what I did for this evening is I took our last budget hearing slide presentation and just updated to show where we are as of today. So we still have a couple remaining unknowns, and these will be the case until August when we do our tax levy, which is the final equalization rate and final assessment. And that won't change the total levy at all. All it will do is move the dollars around between the towns as to what the increase may be, depending on the changes in each of those areas. As Mr. Paschke alluded to, I think it's important to note that this budget is a 1.9% increase on the tax levy, which is the amount that was previously approved by the voters of the district in December for the capital project. That means that you are going with a 0% increase to fund the remaining $33 million or $38 million of costs. Also, we did have adjustments that were necessary to do that. One, we had a decrease in state aid when the legislators approved the New York State budget across 6 aid categories totaling $23,800 net. We also had to reduce $142,505 of expenses, which you see on that slide there, to get down to that level. So taking a look at this slide, you can see the last budget hearing, the last value we had was $38,336,005, which was the middle column. That at the time represented a 5.23% increase in spending. The right-hand column, which is labeled revote, is where we are in each of the major categories as of today, which represents a 4.85% increase in spending. So taking into account, and I'll probably mention again in a few slides, a 4.85% increase in spending and you're getting nothing off your tax levy, it is reflective of getting more state aid in the initial governor's proposal. Taking a look then at the breakdown across categories, salaries and benefits, as we talked about on multiple occasions, totals just about 70% of your budget. The remaining equipment, materials, supplies, contractual expense, BOCES service, and debt service comprise the remaining 30%. To get to the number we're at today, these are the areas that we reduced in instructional salaries, and the second line should say non-instructional. We did reduce the retirements, cuts, shifts to grants, $956,000 on the instructional side, $40,000 on the non-instructional side. And then I'm sorry, next, because line 2 should not be there. Line 3 is the non-instructional, it's 237. BOCES services, we actually had an increase over the last presentation. It was about a $70,000 increase for a student that we had thought was going to be able to come back and couldn't, so we had to put that back in, and that resulted in BOCES being up, instead of down 60, up 12. Equipment, we cut $283,000, contractual expenses, things like utilities, maintenance costs, custodial costs, other materials and supplies were down $399. Materials and supplies were down $24,000. Benefits were down $220,000, which the bulk of that is reflective of decreases in Social Security based upon the position changes up above. And then debt service, we're down $2,500, which is your principal and interest on any current debt. Taking a look then at the salary and benefits, you can see the breakdown across the board. Instructional, we're budgeted up 3%, non-instructional, we're up 10%. That's reflective in part to a number of aides we would have to add due to special education needs, and our benefits were up 3.63%. In this proposal, we still have the resignations and retirements of the 5 instructional positions and the high school principal. We have budgeted and put in for 4 replacements for the instructional staff. We have had 1 high school staff position that will not be replaced, and we have 1 reduction of staff in the middle school. We also have the 5 retirement incentives that are contractually obligated to the individuals above. Salary benefits, you can see we're up to 3.6%. The employees retirement, teachers retirement system, those are all required by New York State. Those rates fluctuate by year. Social Security, of course, is tied to wages in the budget. And then across the rest of it, you can see the comp, life insurance, disability, long-term disability, unemployment insurance, and the group health insurance making up the rest of it. Equipment, materials, and supplies, we're up 10.85%. And you have to kind of take a look at the amounts and look at these percentages in this category. So equipment, we're up 13,000, but it represents 9% because the amount is so low compared to the total budget dollars. And same thing with materials, supplies, you're up only 88,000 out of a $38 million budget, but that reflects 11%. Contractual expense in BOCES services, I mentioned a moment ago that our BOCES was up from the original draft, 4.3 there. Debt service really, like I said, a minor change here, and that's due to a reduction in our transfers to other funds. This is the principal and interest on current debt that the district has. Taking a look then on the revenue side, the offset side, state aid, you're up $1.4 million. Local sources, which is things like admissions, interest income, rent, we're down $26,000. Also non-resident tuition. Federal aid, which is our Medicare reimbursement, we're projecting that to be even. We applied $750,000 again of unappropriated fund balance towards the levy, and of course our tax levy is at $17,486,000. You can see at the bottom that our state aid, the lowest column there across, our state aid makes up 50.67% of the budget, and our tax levy makes up 45.78%. And you'll notice, taking a look going back to 2021-22, it's actually 5% lower than it had been in those 21, 22, 22, 23 years as a percentage of budget. And then this slide takes a look at the breakdown like we did on the expenditure side of what percentage it comprises of the budget. So you saw the last slide, 48.5% for the levy, 50% for state aid, 0.27 for the federal, 1.31 for local sources, which of course doesn't tie out to 100%. The remaining 1.97% is the amount of fund balance that you've applied against the tax levy. This budget still does include a capital outlay project. We can do up to $100,000 of work per year. We are aided at 82.7%, which is our building aid ratio. So we get $82,700 back on each $100,000 project. We are projecting right now to do field work at the Main Street campus. If you do a field work, you need to do $10,000 of inside work, which will be classroom flooring replacement in the elementary school. And then also we have a required New York State architect's fee. The next slide we had on a few presentations, which just shows some of the shared services that the district participates in. We're in consortiums for electric and natural gas through BOCES, health insurance through the Chautauqua County School District Medical Health Plan, which encompasses all the districts in the county. Workers' comp to Erie 1, we share services with other districts for athletics, transportation, and even a part-time art teacher. The district has a current tax levy limit of 4.65%, which would allow our levy to go up $797,000. Our proposed amount in this draft is 1.9%, which again, a reminder that this is only covering the amount that was previously approved for the project. The district is therefore in compliance with the tax levy limit and is not seeking a 60% majority to override that. Also, it should be noted that the district also would have to comply with the administrative cap if there was a second defeated budget, and we're currently under that, so we're in compliance if we had to go to that cap regulation. So for contingency budget, it will mean that you'll have to have a tax levy that is no greater than the previous year, so essentially a zero increase on your tax levy. There are also other things that occur in a contingent budget. All equipment needs to be removed unless it's for health and safety. You would have to charge rent for all uses of the facilities. Currently we do on the major items, but not for things like Boy Scouts or Girl Scouts. We would have to charge that. There's also some things like removal of athletic uniforms and some other categories that, if we get to that point, we would have to bring forward to the board just for informational purposes. If we went to a zero situation, you'd be looking at least $326,000 in additional reductions. And given that 70% of your budget is staffing and benefits, that would have to be where you look, and you're probably talking about somewhere in that 3 to 4 staff positions on top of elimination of all equipment and the other things I mentioned. This slide shows the comparison of the tax levy limit. As I showed a couple slides ago, we're at 4.65 as our allowable limit. We're at 1.90. So that means on a 10-year average, your tax levy has been 1.26%. Over the last 5 years, it's been 1.5% of an increase. And you can know from your own lives when things have gone up over that time period. So over the same time period, the tax levy limit has been 2.29%, so we're almost a full percentage point below that. And our 5-year average of 2.4, we're almost a full percentage point lower than that would have been allowed to be levied. The next slide just gives a comparison of our actual tax levy. In this proposal, we're at $17,486,255, which is at 1.9%. And then our comparative budget, just showing the budget per year going back to 2015-16 and what the increases have been over that time period. And that's the end of the slide presentation. Dr. Zerlak.
Oh yeah, I just kind of want to summarize. Thank you for being here tonight, especially on a Friday night. We do appreciate your presence and your input. So as has been said several times, but we're really trying to make sure this is understood. The levy increase is 1.9%. Again, that's down from 2.59. That only includes what was approved in December around the capital project. I also wanted to note that, remember, we're talking about Proposition 1 from the capital project. This was termed the warm, safe, and dry part of the project. These are maintenance items. These are things like roof, mechanical systems, electrical systems, heating systems, so on and so forth. They're really those things that are necessary, much like you would do in your own home over time, to keep things running properly and efficiently, and really allowing for a safe learning environment for both our students and our adults. As Mr. Forbes pointed out, the difference between that 259 and the 19 is about $166,000. In other budgets where we hadn't pared things down so much to get to the 2.59, we might have had some other room within the budget to maneuver, but we had already cut things down to get to the 2.59. And where it becomes difficult is when we start talking about reductions in staffing, because there are implications and there are impacts on a couple different levels there. As was mentioned in this adjusted proposal, is one high school teaching position, one middle school teaching position, and also some summer school cuts, really focusing on high school and credit recovery to keep students on track for graduation. Now, our administrative team, our Board of Education, really takes this part of our job seriously. There's a lot of time, effort, and energy put into where could we take a reduction with the least damage or the least impact. However, there are impacts to individuals, whether you're student or adult, our teams of teachers, our departments, the number of courses that we're able to offer, the number of students in each section or in a class, the scheduling options for students, particularly at the high school, that are trying to get into a variety of courses to meet their needs and their interests and really position them in the best possible place for success moving forward. Also thinking about the number of courses that each of our instructors is teaching, the number of preparations they have each school year across the board. And in the end, really that idea of the number of opportunities and experiences we are offering our students. At the beginning of this process, I just echoed a few times that, this is a yearly process. Again, there's a lot of time and energy just put into delivering a proposed budget. We get into those conversations about the needs and the strength of our program and the opportunities we offer versus the cost to our taxpayer. So it's a collaborative process of a variety of stakeholders across the district, and we do the best we can to bring a proposal that balances those needs and those programs and those opportunities with the cost. As was mentioned by Mr. Forbes, if this vote on June 17th is not successful, we go to a contingency budget, which would bring another layer of reductions and another layer of decisions for us here. We are hoping to avoid that. We're hoping that we will bring in a proposal that will work for everyone. And, at some point, we are really just trying to put our students in the best possible position to be successful. Whether they're moving from grade to grade or a class of 25, leaving our school district, we want them in the best possible position to really maximize their potential, be their best selves as they're headed to whatever the next step is. So I just wanted to summarize a little bit and make sure that that was clear. And I think at this point, we would open it up to questions or comments from the Board of Education.
Thank you, Dr. Zoliak. Yeah, so just to summarize your summary, to get this right, we're asking for a 1.9% increase, which was our capital project approval proposition 1 in December, which was approved. And that's all. Basically, we're asking for the 1.9% to fund that capital project. And to do that, we had to get down 166,000, you said?
Correct.
Yep. And to do that, we've removed a position at the high school level and one at the middle school level.
Correct.
And I'm a little confused about, I thought we were removing summer school K through 8, or did I hear that wrong? Did you say high school or?
That's correct. High school will remain.
Okay, so I heard correctly, so we're moving K through 8. We've seen these slides a number of times. Basically, it's down to that, really, synthesizing that in terms of what we're doing. That's the essentially the difference to get down to 1.9% versus the capital project. Any questions from the board? Comments? Okay. Well,
guess, you know, it's pretty
How
straight.
about I get started, okay?
Okay.
With comments.
Sure.
The state is increasing their state aid by 8%. And we talked about this. Since the state is providing 50% of our budget revenue, we could go to the 0% and still increase our budget by 4%. Correct? Round terms. Okay?
Probably a little bit lower than that.
Round terms, 4%. The capital project is funded, could be funded out of that 4%. And then the increase, the remaining increase could be another 2% plus. My concern here is that our voters have already declined this. They declined it to 2.59%. And we're expecting a different result with a minimal decrease in our proposed tax rate. I don't see it happening. I don't see it happening. We have, from what I understand, there are still positions from our COVID funding that are still here, that were hired with the understanding that once the funding ended, the positions would end. And we were continually told that once those funds ended, those positions would go away, or they would be, the individuals would be retained in the school district, but the positions would go away. They would fill another position through attrition, through retirements. But our staff members would go back to similar to what they were pre-COVID. So I'm concerned that we're still spending, you know, we talk about the salaries and benefits of our teachers, and that's contractual, but the number of teachers and the number of staff are not contractual. Those were temporary positions, and those would be the first place that I would look to cut in order to balance this budget.
Can I ask a question? I think I asked this last week, but when we were looking in the budget book, the increase in staff positions over about the past 10 years, I think only a couple were teachers, there others were social workers, school psychologists, school counselors. Is that right? So we've added, probably partially due to COVID, we've added those because those were our needs from that time period.
Yeah, and that, I would say mainly the increases are in special education instruction and with some type of student support. So you're right, there's a couple counselors in there, a couple social workers, school psychologist, I believe, a variety of special ed. Now the special ed increases sometimes are deceiving because oftentimes they're bringing students back from OC's programs to be housed here. We would prefer to have our students who live in Fredonia attend school in Fredonia schools. So that's not necessarily a straight addition of staff without returning some students. And you know, if you look at it straight from a numbers point of view, some of those placements are, you know, in between $90,000 and $120,000, $130,000, and that's what those students need. So I'm not looking at it as purely a dollars and cents point of view, but when we have an opportunity to have a group of students in a cohort that can participate in a class here, we've done that several times, and that's been beneficial, I think, to the students. Also, you know, creating that sense of community here amongst our students who live within our school district. And, you know, we really don't have what I would say a straight classroom or
content area additions during this time. You know, there was also a speech position in there. We've also added things like our sports trainer, so on and so forth. So, you know, everything that you're describing and I'm describing, again, really goes back to that idea of needs, our student needs, and how do we provide for those. What I recall, and I might remember things a little bit different than Mr. Aldrich, is that we were saying that when we got to the end of that COVID money, we would reassess. And we would take a look at where we are and try to make decisions the best we could from there. And during this time of COVID, there has been some impact on student readiness, student preparedness to start school, student skill level, so on and so forth. So some of those things that we thought in the moment we might be able to address some of these things, make up the difference in those gaps and move on, we found that these needs persist. So, like I said, at the end of the day, we're trying to balance that all out, those needs and the costs, and where is the happy medium that's going to work for everybody.
Mr. Forbes, could you go to the, or Kate, could you go to the proposed budget revenue summary? Just, yeah, it's about halfway in. And so, you know, I mean, you're right, Mr. Aldrich, about the COVID, and we added those positions, and I'm not discounting what you said in terms of, I think, you know, we do have to start, you know, paying attention, closer attention to our expenditures. I propose that we start looking at our staffing in November as opposed to in March, and then we have to assemble, because we don't know our revenue, but we would have some idea of where we're going in terms of staffing and student enrollment, things like that in November. That's under our control. Revenue isn't until the end. And often it's like the last week in April or even May, I don't know. But I think, you know, you mentioned about COVID, and I think, yeah, you're right. I mean, we talked about, you know, once COVID dried up, but another thing that has changed over the 5 years apart from COVID is our demographics. I think our demographics are changing. I think in some ways this slide illustrates that. As you look at our state aid from 42 to 50 and a reverse, kind of a reverse on the tax levy, I think that's a signal that our demographics are changing because they often give more money if the school needs, has high needs. And also, they give more aid if your population is fairly steady, which for the last 5 years it has. It fluctuates a little bit, up 10, down 10, but it's not too much different over the 5 years. Go back beyond that, certainly there's been a drop. So I think, you know, that we have to take this into account too. You know, we have more needs, and but certainly we also have to pay attention to the expenditures, and you know, because they are high. They are high. Any other comments, questions?
Could you just tell us about the two positions that there are these current teachers who are being laid off? Is it attrition? What is the one teacher at the middle and one at the high?
Yeah, one of the things we talked about is out of respect for people who just heard this information today. We don't want to get too deep into it tonight, but one of them is a retirement position that we're not filled. The other is just really looking at efficiency across the board and what would have the least impact to students. And that would be more of a straight reduction than a retirement.
Other questions? Or?
Yeah, I have one more question, just to understand Brian's point to, so if we went to a zero, and I also just want to make clear, if this does not pass, there isn't another vote, it just goes to contingency, okay?
Correct.
So if that happens and we're at 0, which I understand you're saying is still up 4%, right? So we're up 4%, but we're using 2%, 1.9 for the capital. That deficit, that's still, although it's up, it still will cost 4 positions. Is that correct?
I'd say that's a good estimate.
So even though it's more money than we spent last year, it still comes at a cost of 4 teachers. I just want to make sure I'm understanding that correctly.
And could you just summarize for us because there may be more money, but aren't there more expenses also? So what are the additional expenses?
Yeah, John, do you want to run through
Well, pretty much
major categories?
everything we've talked about throughout this process, your BOCES costs have gone up, your utilities go up, and so all of that's getting absorbed in a number of ways. One, we did get the increase in state aid that's been referenced tonight, and then we also went through line items that we might normally carry surplus to help our fund balance, where we're not carrying as much anymore, and saying, all right, we gotta keep the levy down, how do we do that? Well, if we can't do it with aid, we've gotta do it from within, and from within you go through and say, normally I budget 50,000 extra on this line, now I'm budgeting 25, and hope that would come in good on those guests, I guess you call it. And that's things like tracking utilities and saying, all right, you can't really go back 10 years because things have changed so much with costs and everything, but if you look at like a 2 or 3 year period for utilities, you could say, how do we track, we had warm winter, we had cold winter, did we stay relatively there? Because that would be an area I normally would have extra in. And then BOCES services, typically a high-cost special ed, I carry extra slots for students, so now I'm down to essentially 1 extra slot, so it's the business official's nightmare, which has happened in other districts. It happened in Brockton quite a while ago now, and when I was in graduate school for my degrees, it was Rochester area had where a family of 5 or 6 move in with varying needs, but you have to pick them all up, and while it's true you get aid on it, in the moment you don't. That's a categorical aid, so you have to pay for it now and get the aid next year. So those are all the things you look at going through, and Kristen Farrow and I probably had 20 conversations. Is this the list that I need? Is there anybody coming in? Is there anybody going out? And those things occur across all the expenditure areas. And things go up. I mean, we have 2 union contracts on the table right now, and obviously we'd like to do what's best for that, but I don't know where it's going to land in comparison to what I'm projecting it to be. And if they become extended negotiations, then you get into retros and carrying money forward if it goes over the next year. It's complicated quickly.
Thanks.
Other questions?
Well, talking about this idea of if the people vote, why do they revote? It's like the people voted in December and they agreed 1.9% for Prop 1 of the capital project, and yet we had to have them vote again for it in the budget. So to me, that doesn't make sense. I understand it's the way it is, but they already voted yes. So now to vote no seems a bit confounding to me.
Does seem strange, odd that New York State works that way. Because, things have changed, there's the village, and we understand that, but, it was approved. But, yeah. Mr. Forbes, actually, Kate, can you remember the proposed budget and expenditure summary, the 3rd page? Because, there's concern, right, in the room about
There we go, yep. I think is that what you need to be then?
the 4.85%, so it's high. But when you're going through the slides, I don't know if I've seen this slide before, maybe I missed it. Okay, it's probably me. Could you go to your debt service, Kate, slide? It's right before revenue. I don't know if I've seen this exactly like this before.
Okay.
Right before revenue.
Yeah, I only see one slide at a time, so.
It's
Bear
okay.
with me.
Sorry,
So, yeah,
putting
we
a
go
lot
one
of
more.
pressure
There we
on
go.
So, this is expense, right? And I see capital fund, 70,000 last year, 395,000 this year, difference of 325, 464%. Maybe I missed that. Maybe you've had that before?
Yeah, this slide's up there, and what that is, we worked with Municipal Solutions, who's our financial advisor, and in 24-25, she wanted us to have $70,000 for transfer in case we need it for project vote expenses. That has to be transferred to capital fund. Any expense you have for any building project is budgeted initially in general fund, but it eventually slides over to capital. So $70,000 was in case we ran into a problem with the pre-project vote for things like legal notices or lawyers' fees or things of that nature. The $395 is budgeted for the first scheduled debt payment on construction. If you delay the $395 and push it out, it changes the term of your final debt service payments. That changes the method in which you get state aid. So we'll try to maintain that, and that would be, because we're going to be doing work next summer, that'll be the first payment against that.
So it's an advance payment.
We have it in there because at some point in 25-26, we'll have a debt. Typically with bigger projects, you do a bond anticipation note for a year or two till the project's finalized, then you go to full serial bond. And so this will be covering any interest that we have in principal payment.
So we have a big increase in expenditures, almost $400,000. What happens next year?
Next year, good question. This is only the expense side. On the revenue side, in 25-26, there's no aid offset because it's a categorical aid.
So
You
this year.
haven't spending it.
So this year.
So in 25-26, you'll spend it. In 26-27, you'll get aid back on whatever you spent, which will offset that. And then moving forward, it'll be aid and expense each year until you get to that.
And how much, what percentage?
It'll be 82.7% back in aid on that.
So that's a big hit. That's
a very good.
That's $400,000 out of, how much did our budget go up? Or expenses?
Your levy's up
Dollar
326 right now.
What's that?
Your levy's up 326, so theoretically, if you didn't have that there, you'd have a zero left. If you want to look at it simple.
Right. So that 4.85 on the third page,
Yep.
what would that be if that was out of there?
Well, 1% of the budget's about 360,000, so you'd be, as Mr. Aldrich alluded to, somewhere around that 4% range still.
Okay, all right. Still high, but less than 4.85, so, so that's a one-off this year, and then we start getting revenue next year. Okay. But we gotta pay for it this year. Any other questions, or? No? Okay. All right, let's move on. So we have to approve the proposed budget for the 25-26 school year in the amount of $38,100,000. I'll get my glasses on here. $38,193,800, which will be voted upon at the annual meeting of the voters scheduled on June 17, 2025, from 2 to 9 p.m. in the high school cafeteria. Can I have a motion to bring that to the table?
So moved.
Let's go. Second?
Second.
Ms. Fortner, thank you. All in favor?
Oh, no, I get to do this one.
Oh, it's a roll call.
That's right, I get to do
A
something.
roll call, sorry.
Okay. So we will respond with either an aye or an A. Mr. Johnston?
Aye.
Ms. Fortner?
Aye.
Mr. Aldrich?
Nay.
Ms. Gullo?
Aye.
And Ms. Hahn?
Um,
Aye. The ayes have it, 4-1. Motion passes.
Okay, so that's, we move on, Ms. Morrison?
Yes, we may move on.
Okay. So next, we need to approve the Fredonia Central School District property tax report card for the 25-26 proposed budget. Could I have a motion to bring that to the table?
So moved.
Ms. Hahn, a second?
Second.
Ms. Gullo, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye. And that is, I am not opposed to the numbers or the correctness, but I'm opposed just because I vote against the motion and for the, so I will be consistent within that.
Okay. All right, so we move into new business. It looks like we need to approve the legal notice for the 25-26 budget revote as presented. Have a motion to bring that to the table.
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Hahn, a second. Ms. Morrison, anything to elaborate on this?
No, this is simply the legal notice that needs to run we had a legal notice that needed to run prior to the annual initial budget. This just satisfies the state requirements to do so. And it will run on June 3rd and on June 10th.
Okay. Any questions on that at all, or? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Nay. And again, it's not because I disagree with anything, but I'm really consistent with that.
Next, we need to approve the propositions to be used in the voting machines for the 25-26 school year budget, revote on June 17th, 2025. We have Proposition 1, resolve that the Fredonia Central School District Board of Education expend a budget amount not to exceed $38,193,800 for the 2025-2026 fiscal year, and levy necessary taxes therefore. Could I have a motion to bring this to the table?
So moved.
Ms. Fortna, a second?
Second.
Yep, it's a tie. Ms. Hahn, I'll get you Ms. Stoller next time. Any questions on this? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, well, that moves us into our second round of public discussion, hearing. Same rules apply, name, address, 5 minutes. It can be on anything, but I assume it'll be on the budget if anybody wants to speak. Would anybody like to speak in the second round?
Mary Days, 4422 Osborne Road. I didn't say that before. Back to the 1.9. It's probably not clear to the public, because that's what you voted for in the first place. But it's not, in the fact that you're up over 4%. So really, that 4% with the state aid you could be at 0. There wasn't that long ago that a superintendent or the board wouldn't even dare to even approach barely 1%, because the voters would not approve it. So this is a new norm. But I'm saying that one is not really accurate when you say it that way, as been explained, because you really are up 4%. And to say that expenditures are up, we know the expenditures are up, they're up for everybody. So that's where you have to make cuts somewhere else. And you would not be in this position if had followed through on what was said before, through attrition when teachers retired. You don't need that many, and now you're in this awful position. Okay, but if you had done it the past 2 or 3 years, there wouldn't be an issue. But it is, you put yourself there. As far as students not coming, more of a curriculum thing, students not coming as prepared, I know that. This new science of reading or whatever it's just going back to pre-reading, even things before phonics, pre-reading activities. It's what was known 2, 3, 5, 1950s decades. It's not new, and any student can learn to read if they have that new base. That's just the state trying to correct their awful mistake of Common Core. It just destroyed students for too long. But teachers that knew how to teach reading didn't let them hold that back that much. That's all that is. So yes, I know they're coming less prepared, but that was a failed thing that the state did. So you go back to that, it's just so tried and true, it's just ridiculous going back to it. And I would also comment that, well, with the COVID, the way I remember it with teachers was there would be nutrition, not, oh, we'll reevaluate. It's just not following through on what was said. And last thing is, I would caution you when you use education jargon, and I know the best of the education jargon, but things thrown out like instructional integrity, that's why we have to have the budget, or a sense of community, those things, people will put their own meaning on that. They're going to be different meanings, but it really has nothing to do with money. So it's not useful to use those comments when you're talking about that, because it's not so. So you need to cut through some of these things that, you know, voters are getting, I don't know, more wise to, who will even remember it's voting day. I know, you, like I said, you count on that, but it's just not realistic. Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak in the second session?
Just a question. Is it possible for, when they vote on the budget the second time, to do like Sherman Clymer Panama did an exit poll to see if there's an appetite for other people in the district to want to merge?
It's possible to do a survey at any time. I mean, the one downside of doing it at, during a vote is that it would only be the people that attended the vote.
Right.
Which tends to be a fairly small percentage of the overall community residents. So I felt like if we wanted to do that, and we've got really good results lately on surveys that are available online for a variety of reasons. That could be one example.
I can't help but think that I'm the only one that thinks merging is a good idea. There's so many benefits to merging. I just would like to know what other people feel about it. I can't believe I'm the only one that thinks about this. And I'm not just talking about school districts, I'm talking about towns and villages, police, fire departments. I think there's a lot of ways we could go with mergers.
Thank you, Ms. Shields.
Thank you.
Thank you. If there's no other comment, we can adjourn. So that brings us to the end of the meeting. We will reconvene on Tuesday, is it June 3rd, I think?
Yes.
Tuesday, June 3rd, a regularly scheduled meeting and also a special budget hearing. So, there's no further business, got a motion to adjourn the meeting? Ms. Gordon, a second?
Second.
Who did I pick last?
This time it goes to.
Ms. Gallo, thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Meeting's closed. Thank you, board members, for your time on a Friday night, and for those that came and attended the session tonight on a Friday night. Drive safe, everybody.